I am the legitimate daughter of a duke's mansion. Yet I am blind. In my previous life, my younger half-sister tricked me into killing a chicken, and I stabbed my husband to death with a knife. I was then brutally killed by my mother-in-law. When I opened my eyes again, my younger half-sister was shoving a knife into my hands. She claimed she was carrying my husband's only heir and ordered me to kill the chicken to nourish her. Little did she know that upon my rebirth, my eyesight had been restored. But this time, I raised the knife again and stabbed my husband without hesitation. Chapter 1. Blood spattered everywhere as the long knife plunged into Shuangwen's heart, killing him instantly. My eyes were lifeless as I feigned confusion. Strange. Why didn't I hear the chicken crow? Su Jinyue thought I couldn't see her, so she excitedly spun in circles, not forgetting to remind me, "Sister, wait here for me. I'll go find someone to help you." Saying that, she hurried out the door. Now she should be pretending to be panicked, going to find Lady Shen and bringing people back to catch me in the act. After all, that's exactly what she did in my previous life. What a joke. Do you think I'd fall for her trick again? I pushed open the window and ran away. In my previous life, I also killed Shuangwen with my own hands. After being caught by Lady Shen, I couldn't defend myself. The Duke's mansion became a laughingstock in the capital for having a daughter who was a murderer, and the Empress Dowager ordered the title to be stripped. As a member of the Shen family, my life and death were decided by my in-laws. My mother-in-law turned me into a human pig, torturing me for half a year until I finally died. When I died, Su Jinyu had just given birth to Shuangwen's son, who inherited the entire Shen family fortune. How ironic that I, the sole daughter of the Duke's mansion, who married into the Shen family without a title, ended up being schemed to death by an illegitimate younger sister from the concubine's family. Before I died, Su Jinyue came to see me holding the child. Her eyes filled with triumph. "You didn't know, did you? Actually, Shen Lang was already dead before you acted. So you killed a corpse." I clenched my teeth and shouted, "You venomous woman. It's all his fault for loving only you." Su Yaoguang. Even after I drugged him, he still refused to marry me. After I discovered he was already dead, I came up with this brilliant plan. As long as you're dead, all the family fortune will be ours. Su Jinyu had come to the mansion under the pretense of accompanying me, then climbed into Shuangwen's bed. Soon after, she claimed she was pregnant. Shuangwen didn't explain, he just arranged a courtyard for her outside. I had thought he liked Su Jinyu. After being reborn, seeing the dead Shuangwen, I made a bold decision. Kill him. Find the real culprit behind this and clear my name. Su Jinyu arrived in a hurry with Shenlao Fu Ren and a group of servants. "Madam, I just saw the young mistress storming into this room with a knife, threatening to kill someone. I was so scared." Su Jinyu kept talking. Shenlao Fu Ren hated her, but since it involved the Shen family, she came to check it out herself. The door was pushed open, and Shuangwen's body came into view. Everyone was startled, and Shenlao Fu Ren's knees went weak, nearly fainting from the shock. "The young mistress killed the young master," Su Jinyu shouted. But as she looked around the room, she didn't see me anywhere, and she immediately panicked. "Are you looking for me, sister?" My voice suddenly came from behind her. Su Jinyu looked at me as if she had seen a ghost. "How did you get here?" "You were just now?" I heard the servants report that something had happened in the mansion, so I hurried over. You know I can't see, so I couldn't move quickly. Everyone in the Shen family knows I'm blind. From my courtyard to here, it would take at least a stick of incense to walk at my usual pace. If I were the murderer, I wouldn't have had time to return. Su Jinyu turned to the old lady and said, "She's lying. I saw her enter the room with my own eyes. Now that Shen Lang is dead, Who else would come to such a remote courtyard? I suddenly clutched my chest and grabbed the hand of my personal maid, as if I had just heard the worst news. What did you say? Shuangwen is dead? How could such a thing happen? You murderer. Stop pretending. Old lady. Order them to lock her up and make her pay for Shuangwen's life. Su Jin, you said harshly. I collapsed onto Shinchangqing's body, sobbing uncontrollably. But Qin Mama stood in front of me, her presence overpowering the servants. Our young mistress is the legitimate wife. How dare a concubine slander her? The old lady is of noble birth. Should she listen to the orders of a concubine? We haven't even reported this to the authorities yet. And the coroner hasn't even examined the body. How dare you use the words of a concubine to convict our young mistress? This is outrageous. These were the words I had taught her on the way here. Sure enough. After being scolded, Su Jinyue's face turned red and white, and she clutched her stomach, claiming it hurt. All of you. Shut up. Lady Shin shouted harshly. Separate the young mistress and Su Jinyu and keep them in separate cells. No one is to be released until the true culprit is found. The old lady wants to lock me up too? No. She should have reported it to the authorities first. Why is she locking us up instead? I won't leave. I want to stay with Shuangwen. No one is to separate us. I clung tightly to Shinchangqing's lifeless body, my emotions running wild. In the end, the old lady ordered me to keep vigil over Shinchangqing's body and station several servants outside the funeral hall to guard it. Inside the funeral hall, I lifted Shinchangqing's blood-stained robe, revealing a large expanse of his chest. His body was covered in purple veins, extending all the way down to his lower abdomen. His face unrecognizable. Was he poisoned? Just as I was about to look further, the funeral hall doors suddenly burst open. A group of soldiers rushed in, led by a man wearing a black hat and a python-patterned robe. He was strikingly handsome and walked toward me with long strides. You've caused trouble. And now you remember me. His cold voice carried a hint of contempt. Hearing his voice, I recognized him, so this was what my old acquaintance looked like. I crawled on my hands and knees to his feet, my eyes vacant, but tears streaming down my face. Please, sir, find the murderer who killed my husband. Gu Qin's icy eyes flickered slightly, and he instinctively reached out to help me. He was a man with a heart of gold, but a sharp tongue, and he was easily swayed by such pleas. I am the left supervisor of the Ministry of Justice. Even if Miss Su does not ask, I will investigate this case impartially. Gu Qin said coldly. Gu Qin gave a signal to the people behind him, and immediately, coroners and officials stepped forward. He and I were childhood sweethearts, but we had never gotten along well. However, at this moment, the only person I could rely on was him. When I arrived earlier, I had already sent someone through the back door to inform the Ministry of Justice, asking him to come personally. He arrived much sooner than I had anticipated. Stop! Where are you taking my son? The old lady stumbled forward to block them, refusing to let the coroner examine the body. When she saw me kneeling on the ground, she snarled and raised her hand to strike me. Witch! You've cursed my son to death. Now you're colluding with these people to desecrate his body. You'll never find peace. My mother-in-law was illiterate and an old woman of limited knowledge. These words were likely instigated by Su Jinyu. Before her hand could land, Gu Qin grabbed her and roughly pushed her away. Gu Qin pulled me up with one hand, using his wide official robe to shield me behind him. Gu Qin shouted, "The imperial court is conducting an investigation. No one is allowed to interfere. Old Lady Shen, don't you want to find the murderer of your son?" The old lady couldn't match Gu Qin's strength, so she had no choice but to agree. Gu Qin took Shinchangqing's body away. As he was leaving, he glanced back at me, then turned to the old lady and said, Miss Su is an important witness. I must take her with me, the old lady of the Shin family exclaimed. She is our Shin family's daughter-in-law. How can she go with a stranger? Gu Qin said. I must question Miss Su daily. I will inevitably send people to your home. If the old lady does not mind. I go out every day. If others see me, it would be even more improper. When it came to verbal sparring, few could match Gu Qin. Gu Qin had me placed in a separate courtyard within the Ministry of Justice and assigned a young maid to watch over me. I looked in his direction and said, Thank you. Gu Qin snorted. Don't give me any trouble. And that's all the thanks you'll get. I replied irritably. Do you have to be so sarcastic every time we speak? Back then, who was it who insisted on marrying into the Shin family? Now your mother-in-law is cruel. Your husband is unfaithful, in my opinion. He deserved to die. And it was a fitting end. You should return to your life as Su Yanju. After the wedding, everyone called me Mrs. Shen. Only Gu Qin continued to call me Miss Su. I always thought he was mocking me. But now he's the only one who remembers my real name. To stop him from scolding me, I covered my face and started crying. It was my fault for choosing the wrong person. But I've never harbored any resentment. Everyone says I'm the murderer. But I truly never felt any resentment. He thought I couldn't see him. So he raised his hand above my head, paused for a moment, then clenched his fist and pulled it back. Don't give me that. I'm not going to bother with you. With that, he stormed off. Actually, Gu Qin wasn't always so cruel. When I was a child, my mother took me to the palace. And those princesses and noblewomen mocked me for being blind, then lured me into the cold palace. I panicked and accidentally fell into the icy pool. Just as I was about to drown, someone pulled me out. Gu Qin scolded me fiercely while giving me his cloak and hand warmer. He dragged me to the empress and, with a few words, had her severely punish those who had bullied me. After that, whenever I entered the palace, he would stay by my side at all times. I once thought perhaps he had feelings for me. But as a blind girl, I was utterly unworthy of the promising Gu official. He would become the laughingstock of the entire capital. Later, Shin Changqing came personally to propose marriage. Though his family background was far inferior, I still agreed. My father also believed that marrying down would protect me for the rest of my life. Little did I know I had entered a den of wolves. I had barely settled in when Su Jinyu came knocking on my door. She treated the Ministry of Justice like a marketplace, causing a commotion outside. She claimed she was a witness and demanded to stay since I was allowed to. It was the first time anyone had ever wanted to enter the Ministry of Justice voluntarily. The maidservant helped me stand behind the gate of the Ministry of Justice, eavesdropping on her outburst. Make that murderer Su Yanju come out. She resented Shin Lang and me for loving each other. So she killed Shin Lang to vent her anger. Now she's hiding in her old lover's mansion. What a disgraceful world we live in. Although Su Jinyu is the concubine's daughter of the duke's mansion, she was lost as a child for several years and was adopted by a butcher. By the time she returned, she had developed a coarse and vulgar nature. Her father pitied her for her hardships and never disciplined her. He even forbade anyone else in our household from scolding her. Su Jinyu's outburst attracted a crowd of curious onlookers who knew nothing of the situation. Many were misled by her and began to call me a shameless harlot. 2 soldiers rushed out of the Ministry of Justice, grabbing Su Jinyu on either side. Without a word, they dragged her into the Ministry of Justice. Why are you arresting me? I won't go in. Help! They're killing me. The left supervisor of the Ministry of Justice is killing me. She screamed, but no one dared to help her against the soldiers. After watching the commotion for a while, the crowd grew bored and dispersed. In the main hall of the Ministry of Justice, Gu Qin sat behind his desk. his face as cold as ice, causing a disturbance at the Ministry of Justice, according to the laws of our dynasty. She should be flogged 20 times. Carry out the punishment. Su Jinyu widened her eyes, raised her voice, and screamed sharply. The child in my womb is from the Shin family. How dare you hit me? Gu Qin sneered. What's there to be afraid of? Continue. Su Jinyu was pinned to the ground. When she saw the large board about to strike her, she turned pale with fear. She never expected Gu Qin to actually hit her. Qin Gu. I'm sorry. I won't cause trouble again. Don't hurt my child. But Gu Qin didn't stop, allowing them to continue beating her. Just as the board was about to come down, a urgent voice rang out from outside the hall. Stop immediately! The right supervisor of the Court of Justice rescued Su Jinyu. Su Jinyu fainted from sheer terror and had to be left behind temporarily. I went to find Gu Qin to persuade him not to take things so far for my sake. If Su Jinyu had miscarried today, the Shin family would never let it go. To my surprise, Gu Qin laughed derisively upon hearing this. What kind of favor do you think you've done for me that I should beat someone for you? I suppressed the urge to strike him and said, then why insist on beating her? Gu Qin lowered his voice. Do you know what the right supervisor told me when he came to find me today? The right supervisor said that there was a powerful figure protecting Su Jinyu. Someone none of us could afford to offend. Gu Qin wanted to beat Su Jinyu to lure out the person behind her. An outsider dares to openly challenge authority outside the Ministry of Justice. She must have someone backing her. I hurriedly asked, who is this person? The right supervisor didn't say, but he mentioned that the person had a palace pass and ordered him to come quickly to save her. Su Jinyu has never even set foot in the palace. How could she know someone from the palace? Gu Qin suddenly remembered something else. Last time you told me that when Shin Changqing died, his body was covered in bruises. But the coroner examined him and found only a fatal wound on his chest. Nothing else. I was shocked. That's impossible. He clearly wasn't stabbed to death. Why are you so certain? I was at a loss for words. I couldn't tell him that I had memories from my previous life. I could only explain that it was the servants who had examined him, and I didn't know the details. In any case, all the evidence still points to the murderer who stabbed Shin Changqing with the knife. I left Gu Qin's study in a daze, unable to make sense of it all. How could the marks on Shin Changqing's body have disappeared? I pushed open the door to my room and was met with a scene of chaos. As I turned to flee, I saw a shadow in the moonlight, enveloping me from behind. I quietly touched my wrist, feigning confusion. Strange. Where did my bracelet go? Just as I turned around, the burly man behind me reached out to cover my mouth. I dodged his attack skillfully, slipped under his arm, and ran toward the door. Help! The burly man thought I couldn't see him, so he wasn't on guard. Seeing this, he hurried after me. Su Jinyu emerged from the corner with several black-clad men, blocking my path. Catch her! 2 black-clad men pinned me down, while others tried to wrap a white silk scarf around my neck. The scarf tightened around my neck, and Su Jinyu smugly pulled a letter from her sleeve, forcing it into my chest. You murdered your own husband and committed suicide out of guilt. Leave this letter as your confession of your sins. Sister, rest in peace. No. It's you, Su Jinyu, who should go in peace. A flash of silver light, and several darts flew out from the shadows. The 2 men holding me were struck by the darts and fell to the ground. The soldiers who had been lying in wait all rushed in, capturing Su Jinyu and her black-clad men. This was the trap Gu Qin and I had set. Su Jinyu went to great lengths to enter the Ministry of Justice. She must have had other motives. So I used myself as bait to lure the snake out of its hole. Gu Qin walked toward me in large strides. I quickly lowered my head, pretending not to see him. He carefully removed the white silk ribbon wrapped around my neck. His eyes filled with concern. But he spoke with disdain. All you ever do is show off. I didn't bother listening to his nagging and feigned weakness with a soft awe. What's wrong? Did I hurt you? Quick! Call a doctor. Gu Qin picked me up without a word and carried me into the room. Under Gu Qin's interrogation, Su Jin, you confessed to tonight's events. She wanted to fabricate a false scenario of me committing suicide out of guilt to close the case quickly. Those black-clad men were all hired from the black market. However, Gu Qin found tattoos on their bodies, indicating they were mercenaries from an official's household. Before he could interrogate them further, they all bit their tongues and committed suicide. Su Jin was detained, temporarily unable to cause any trouble, allowing Gu Qin to focus on the investigation. Since Lady Shen insisted on moving Shen Changqing to the funeral hall, the crime scene had already been tampered with. However, the knife I used to stab Shen Changqing was still intact in that room. He ordered the room to be sealed off, forbidding anyone from approaching it. At the Shen residence, he also seized numerous pieces of evidence, including Shen Changqing's correspondence. I went to the study to look for Gu Qin, but no matter how many times I called out, he didn't respond. On the desk lay Shen Changqing's letters. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked one up and unfolded it. My beloved wife? Isn't that my nickname? Did Shen Changqing write this to me? My beloved wife. 3 years since our marriage. Not a single day has passed without me thanking the heavens for giving you to me as my wife. Alas, the world is unpredictable, and loyalty and righteousness are hard to balance. As a subject, I must share the emperor's burdens. My days are numbered, and I fear you will grieve. Therefore, I would rather you blame and hate me. You often said that not being able to see the mountains, rivers, and moonlight is the greatest regret of your life. If I can see the gods after death, I will beg them to restore your sight. Alas, I can no longer be by your side to be your eyes. Every time I think of you alone, my heart aches and I weep blood, unable to sleep through the long nights. May we be husband and wife in the next life and continue our previous bond. Shen Changqing. Final words. There are many similar letters, all written by him to me. Yet they also seem as though he wrote them to himself, for I was never meant to see these letters. By the time I finished reading them all, I was already weeping uncontrollably. Marrying Shen Changqing was my father's plan, and I had no feelings for him. But after we married, he treated me with tenderness and care, staying by my side almost constantly except when he had to attend court. Back when I was living with my parents, they were worried about me and wouldn't let me go out. Shen Changqing knew I was curious about the outside world, so he often took me out. In the 3 years after our marriage, we traveled to many places, and he always protected me well. Just as I was beginning to fall in love with him, Su Jinyue came to our door with a child. Though I didn't argue with Shen Changqing, I shut myself in my room afterward and never spoke to him again. Not a single word passed between us until Shen Changqing died. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I should have told you sooner. I should have told him that I had already fallen in love with him. Perhaps he would have had the will to live instead of choosing death. I sat on the chair, clutching the stack of letters, sobbing uncontrollably. Gu Qin had come to the door unnoticed, staring at me in shock. He rushed over, trembling as he gently wiped the tears from my eyes. Your eyes, can you see now? I wiped away my tears and turned my face away. You're so ugly. Gu Qin knew that I had regained my sight. For some reason, he suddenly became very awkward and dared not look at me when he spoke to me. He even refused to be in the same room with me, and I hadn't seen him for several days. When Gu Qin came to find me again, he brought a rubbing of a footprint. This footprint is yours. Gu Qin's eyes were filled with disappointment. His men searched the room for a long time and finally found my footprints outside the window where I had escaped. to avoid disrupting the case. I confessed. Yes. I stabbed Shin Changqing, but he was already dead. I didn't kill him. Gu Qin remained silent. I hurriedly said, I was framed by Su Jinyue. The person you should be looking for is the one who poisoned Shin Changqing. Not me. The coroner from the Ministry of Justice has decades of experience. And he didn't detect any poison. So you've already concluded that I'm the murderer? I knew Gu Qin was this kind of upright person, who only relied on evidence and didn't consider personal relationships. Since that was the case, I might as well let the soldiers arrest me. I walked toward the door, but Gu Qin grabbed me and locked me in the room, forbidding anyone from visiting. I couldn't understand what he was trying to do. I didn't know how this had gotten out. Now everyone was saying that I had killed my husband for my lover, and that Gu Qin was my lover. The matter had even reached the emperor's ears. At the morning court session, an official accused my father of failing to raise his daughter properly and Gu Qin of abusing his power for personal gain. Everything seemed to be following the same path as in my previous life. The Shin family refused to give up and even brought 2 coffins to the gates of the Ministry of Justice. Lady Shin, with her hair gray at the temples, knelt on the steps, weeping. Su Yanzhu killed my son and colluded with Gu Zong to withhold his body, preventing him from being buried. I want my son's body, and I want the murderer to be buried with him. The case had not yet been resolved, and Lady Shin was hoping to force Gu Qin to conclude the case by causing a commotion. You officials of the Ministry of Justice are biased towards Su Yanzhu and afraid of the power of the Duke's mansion. The onlookers listened with righteous indignation. Who could not pity a widow who had lost her son? Gu Qin could beat Su Jinyue, but he dared not touch Lady Shin in the slightest. Let's go! Let's help the old lady break in and drag the murderer out. Someone in the crowd started the commotion, and soon everyone followed suit, charging toward the gate of the Ministry of Justice. The soldiers and civilians were entangled in a chaotic melee. Stop! At that critical moment, a hoarse voice rang out. An old general in armor sat atop a tall horse, exuding authority without raising his voice. Following closely behind him on horseback was Gu Qin. The crowd wasn't afraid of the government officials, but when they saw the soldiers from the battlefield, they all backed away in fear. The old general Gu Qin had summoned was the Yongcheng Marquis. The old marquis had spent his life on the battlefield and had long-standing ties with the 11 western regions. The military doctor under his command examined Shin Changqing's body and concluded that he had died from a rare poison from the western regions. This poison causes purple-blue patterns to appear on the body shortly after death, but these quickly fade away over time. Those who die from this poison decompose slowly, and their bodies emit a faint, peculiar fragrance. Without extensive experience and familiarity with this poison, it would be impossible to detect. Since Shin Changqing died from poisoning, the wound from my knife was not fatal. Upon hearing this, Shin's elderly mother burst into tears and wailed, "My son! Su Yanzhu was afraid you wouldn't die, so she poisoned you and stabbed you with a knife. You died such a tragic death. Even if Su Yanzhu isn't the murderer, she's a woman of the Shin family and must die with my son. Otherwise, she's not a loyal wife. This mother-in-law of mine really won't give up until she kills me." If I hadn't been trapped in the room, I would have argued with her. Though I couldn't go out, my mouth could speak for Chin Mama. I told her a few words, and she stormed out the door. Who is the one slandering our Duke's legitimate daughter with empty words? How dare you disregard the law of the land? Before my young miss married into the Shin family, they couldn't even afford a modest courtyard. Now, this vast estate is all part of her dowry. You're so eager to take my young mistress's life, could it be to seize her dowry? I spit on you. Whether my young mistress lives or dies, her dowry must be returned to the Duke's mansion. Don't even think about it. After Chen's mother finished speaking, the public opinion shifted instantly. Madame Shin was now the evil mother-in-law who wanted to harm her daughter-in-law and seize the dowry. With both sides refusing to back down, it seemed inevitable that someone would be dragged out today. The young woman who had been hiding behind Lady Shin stepped forward. As long as Su Yenshu is still the daughter-in-law of the Shin family, she must remain chaste for Shingonzi. Even if her in-laws demand she commit suicide with him, she cannot disobey. Lady Shin's demand for Su Yenshu to commit suicide does not violate the law. Gu Qin, well versed in the law, naturally knew this. He clenched his fists and blocked the door. No longer the eloquent man he once was. Just then, an imperial edict arrived. The emperor had personally ordered me to divorce Shin Changqing, and from now on, we would part ways, with no further connection between the Shen and Su families. Upon hearing this, Lady Shin fainted immediately. I was taken back home by the people from the Duke's mansion. Counting the previous life, I hadn't seen my father and mother for several years. They looked much older than I remembered, likely because my affairs had caused them so much worry. If I had known Su Jinyue was so malicious, I never should have brought her back. My mother, upon hearing of my recent experiences, couldn't stop cursing Su Jinyue. Even my father was glared at by my mother. I hugged my mother tightly, looking up at her face, wanting to remember it forever. At least my daughter has returned safely. But why did the emperor help me? My mother sighed deeply, stroking my hair. Don't you really remember the emperor? I shook my head blankly. Was there something else I didn't know? Just then, Chin Mama returned with a group of maids and servants. They had gone to claim my dowry. As per the young Mrs.'s instructions, that mansion has been given to the Shin family, and the rest has been brought back. How ridiculous that old harpy was when we left, throwing a fit and rolling on the ground. If it weren't for the sake of our Duke's family's reputation, even the gold hairpins and jade rings on her body would have been returned to our young miss. Shin Changqing was a proper gentleman, but his mother was an unreasonable woman. When he was around, he would protect me and mediate between his mother and me. Now that he's gone, I'm at her mercy. Now that I've reclaimed my dowry, Lady Shin only has a small portion of Shin Changqing's savings left. She's been living a life of luxury, and that money won't last her a month. If she weren't so determined to take my life, even if I returned home, I wouldn't take the dowry. It's all her own doing. After my divorce from Shin Changqing, my mother took me to the palace to express our gratitude. After all, it was the emperor who saved me from the flames. In the grand hall, the young emperor sat on the dragon throne, and I could only feel the stern gaze from above. Minister Shin was the emperor's personally selected top scholar. When he came to see me for the last time, he entrusted this to me. A eunuch presented me with a letter. I opened it to find a divorce decree. Minister Shin requested my decree early this morning. If he is no longer among the living, you shall be granted a divorce. Therefore, Miss Su need not thank me. If you must thank anyone, thank your husband. Holding the divorce decree, I couldn't help but tear up. The emperor remained silent for a moment before saying to me, "Those who die from this poison lose their lives in hallucinations. Without feeling any pain, what they see before they die are the most beautiful memories of their lives." I took the emperor's words as comfort. What was the last scene Shin Changqing saw before he left? Would it include any of the moments we spent together? I'm sure it wouldn't include me. After all, I never gave him a kind word until his last moments. Even knowing he was outside the door, I deliberately spoke harshly to him, saying that the greatest regret of my life was marrying into the Shin family. The emperor handed me the divorce decree, treating it as a memento. As I left the palace with my mother, walking through the long palace corridors, old memories surfaced in my mind. I remembered. When I first entered the palace, the Empress Dowager liked me very much and joked that she wanted me to be her daughter-in-law. But the young prince despised me and mocked me in front of everyone. I'd never marry a blind girl. How could a blind woman become empress? From then on, all the noble ladies mocked me for being delusional and bullied me even more cruelly. Perhaps the memory was too painful, so I chose to forget it. As soon as we left the palace, chaos erupted within the imperial grounds. Rumors spread that the emperor had been poisoned to death, and the poison was the same as that used on Shen Chongqing. At the same time, Gu Qin sent a messenger with a message. Su Jinyue had fled. If she returned to the duke's mansion, inform him immediately. There weren't many places in the capital where she could stay, the Su family, the Shen family, and nowhere else. I took some people and went to the Shen family myself. After just a few days, the Shen family was no longer the same as when I was there. The old lady of the Shen family couldn't afford servants, and besides an old woman who had served her for years, there were no other servants. The once grand garden now stands desolate and empty. Even the gatekeeper is her distant nephew. They must be hoping she dies so they can claim the estate for themselves. What are you doing here? Do you intend to take my house as well? Madame Shen shows no awareness that she is living in someone else's home. This garden was originally my dowry. I only let her stay here temporarily. Hand over Su Jinyu, and I'll give you half of my dowry to ensure you live out your days in peace. The terms I offered were extremely tempting, and the old lady seemed somewhat swayed. Su Jinyu is carrying my child. I was planning to demand her from the duke's mansion, but you're the one accusing me first. The Shen family was now destitute, and after searching everywhere, there was no trace of Su Jinyu. Su Jinyu was neither at the Shen family nor the Su family. Where could she have gone? I had no choice but to return to the duke's mansion by carriage. On the way back, we passed through Zhuke Street, the most bustling street in Chang'an. However, the street was chaotic, with people shouting things like murder. I had only brought 2 servants and a few maids with me, so I told them to take a back alley and return home quickly. As soon as I returned to the duke's mansion, my father ordered the entire estate to be sealed off, and no one was allowed to enter or exit freely. Those rebels are killing everyone they see, and many people have been killed on the streets. It's said that the emperor has died, but no heir has been designated. So Prince Ning has rebelled. The servants sent out to gather information returned with their reports. Prince Ning was the late emperor's younger brother and the current emperor's uncle. Who would have thought he harbored such wolfish ambitions and acted so impatiently? That night, flickers of firelight occasionally appeared outside our home. Fortunately, the Guigong mansion had many guards, and the rebel forces' several attempts to storm the compound were repelled at the outer courtyard. At dawn, I awoke in my mother's arms. The women of our household had spent the night hiding in a secret room. The door was opened, and in an instant, blinding light poured in from outside. The messenger boy excitedly said, "Lady, good news! The emperor has not died. The rebel leader's head is now hanging from the city gate." Hearing this, we were both shocked and overjoyed. The young emperor in the palace, though he had only been in power for a short time, was quite cunning. He had known that Prince Ning was plotting rebellion and deliberately spread the news of his own death to lure the rebels out of their hiding places, ultimately capturing them all in one fell swoop. Su Jinyu was found in Prince Ning's mansion. When she was captured, I happened to be there to watch the commotion. It was Gu Qin who called me over. "Do you know whose child I'm carrying? How dare you treat me this way? I'm carrying the emperor's heir." Su Jinyu clutched her stomach, her voice filled with anger. Gu Qin stood with his hands behind his back, snorting coldly. "The traitor Ning Wang is dead. The monster in your womb must also be killed. Choose your own method of death." "What? He's dead too?" Su Jinyu was speechless. She couldn't accept the blow and began to ramble incoherently. "Why do all the men I rely on die? How can they be so useless? Ning Wang, you deceived me so cruelly. You clearly said that once Shin Changqing was killed, the Shin family's assets would all be mine. You forced me to marry you but refused to give me a proper status. I hate you so much. You're finally dead. It turned out that the child in her womb was Ning Wang's. I thought about it carefully. During the Lantern Festival, Su Jinyu had indeed been separated from her family for a long time. After she returned, she said nothing and killed her own personal maid. Su Jinyu suddenly lunged at the soldiers, snatched the sword from his waist, and charged straight toward me. Die! In a panic, Gu Qin stepped in front of me, and the sword pierced his heart. Su Jinyu died under the soldier's blades, struck multiple times, and as she died, she glared upward in defiance. Gu Qin? I trembled as I reached out to support him, but Gu Qin's body trembled and he fell backward. Gu Qin's injuries were too severe. Before the doctor could arrive to treat him, he drew his last breath. I held him in my arms, calling his name over and over, but his body grew cold between my fingers. In the end, there was only a cold, lifeless body. No, this isn't right. In my previous life, he didn't die at the hands of Su Jinyu. It was all because I dragged him into this. I'm the one who killed him. Why are you all leaving me? I suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. My vision went black, and I collapsed to the ground. I had a very long dream. In the dream, I returned to the room where Lady Shin had imprisoned me in my previous life. The servants discovered I had died and buried me under the pear tree in the courtyard. Later, someone stumbled into the courtyard, their clean, slender hands digging frantically under the pear tree. They dug until their hands were covered in blood, finally uncovering my mangled corpse. I recognized the man. It was Gu Qin. He exposed the crimes of the Shin family and used every means at his disposal to punish those who had harmed me. After completing the final case file, he locked himself in his bedroom and set it ablaze. The scene shifted to a grand hall filled with statues of gods and Buddhas. Gu Qin knelt on the ground, praying fervently. She suffered too much in her previous life. I am willing to trade my lifespan for her to live 100 years. That is why I was reborn, while he died so young. Was this the outcome he had prayed for? I suddenly awoke to find my mother sitting by my bed, tears of joy streaming down her face. My son, you nearly scared me to death. You must never do such a foolish thing again. I won't seek death, for this life was traded by Gu Qin, and I must cherish it above all else. The scholar by Gu Qin's side suddenly passed me a message. His master had discovered before his death that in the black market of Chang'an, a foreigner was selling a rare poison from the western regions. The poison that poisoned Shin Changqing was purchased from him. They have already apprehended the merchant. I originally thought the buyer was Prince Ning, but yesterday the merchant came to report that the buyer had gone to find him again. I furrowed my brows and thought, Prince Ning is dead. Could it be that the one who killed Shin Changqing wasn't one of Prince Ning's men? Shin Changqing had received the emperor's instructions and had repeatedly clashed with Prince Ning in the imperial court. Prince Ning had long harbored intentions to kill him. So we all believed that Shin Changqing was killed by Prince Ning. Now it seems the matter is far more complicated. I disguised myself as a merchant and met the buyer in the black market, while the secret guards of the Duke's mansion kept watch nearby to protect me. During the waiting period, I speculated about many possibilities. Perhaps it was one of Prince Ning's henchmen, or someone from Su Jinyue's faction. But I never imagined it would be her. He was your own son. You killed him. I stared at the old lady Shin in disbelief. Wasn't she the one who loved her only son Shin Changqing the most? Wasn't she the one who tortured me for half a year just to avenge Shin Changqing? The old lady Shin tried to escape but was blocked by the secret guards. She laughed hysterically. Yes. It was me who killed him. I was still confused. He was your only child. And you were willing to kill me to avenge him. Why would you do this? Old lady Shin suddenly shouted. Who told him to block Prince Ning's path? I told him over and over not to harm Prince Ning. But he wouldn't listen. This woman had truly lost her mind. I vaguely remembered that Lady Shen had once been a lowly maid in the prince's mansion, later promoted to a personal attendant by her master. A few years later, she married her cousin from the Shen family, who was a farmer. It turned out that the master Lady Shen had once served was none other than Prince Ning. The man she had always loved and longed for was also Prince Ning. She was even willing to kill her own son for him. So you want to kill me and turn me into a human pig to cover up your own guilt? I grabbed Mrs. Shen's neck. How tragic that when I was tortured in my previous life, I actually believed I was atoning for my sins. Even when the people from the Duke's mansion came to rescue me, I gave up the chance to survive. For the past 6 months, I've been living in constant physical pain and mental anguish. The strength in my hands grew, and Lady Shen began to roll her eyes. A voice suddenly echoed in my mind. Stop! I released my grip, and Lady Shen collapsed to the ground. Did you know all along that the child in Su Jinyu's womb was Prince Ning's? I asked, lowering my gaze. Lady Shen feigned ignorance. She looked as though the world had collapsed. How could that be? How could she be carrying Prince Ning's child? How could Prince Ning have another woman? She shouted that she wanted to find out the truth and threw herself against the wall. After the dust settled, my father and mother wanted to find another marriage for me. The emperor in the imperial city issued an edict, intending to bring me into the palace and grant me the title of empress. On the eve of the investiture ceremony, I left a letter and fled. The letter mostly expressed the guilt I felt from my youth, pleading with the emperor not to involve my family. Later, I traveled alone across the rivers and mountains, seeing many landscapes I had never seen in my previous life. 20 years later, I died of illness in Yongzhou. On my deathbed, my adopted daughter asked me if I had any final wishes. I told her to bring me the letter at the bottom of the makeup box. All the letters Shen Changqing had written over the years were carefully preserved by me. I unfolded one of the letters. My beloved wife. After I die, I will wait for you at the Naiha Bridge. If you do not come, I will not leave. But what if you do not recognize me? Well, never mind. You must hate me deeply. Then I will only watch you from the bridge for a moment. I closed my eyes and faintly saw the day Shen Changqing came to my home to ask for my hand in marriage. His face was once blurry, but now I could see his features clearly. He wore a blue robe with black hair, handsome and distinguished. This Western poison is indeed as legendary as they say, allowing one to see the happiest moments of their life before death. I saw the sweet days after our marriage. Shen Changqing always liked to hold my hand and trace it on his cheek. He said I should remember his face. And if there were many people at the Naiha Bridge, I should touch each one until I found him. My body grew lighter and lighter. And before I knew it, I arrived at the banks of a turbulent river. The Duke's mansion had also fallen into disgrace after its daughter became a murderer, becoming a laughingstock in the capital. The Empress Dowager ordered their title to be stripped. Shen Changqing was right, there were many people standing by the bridge, having waited for many years. Among the crowd, a bright gaze fell upon me, but when I looked over, he averted his eyes, pretending not to recognize me. I walked straight toward him and pinched his face firmly. You're pretending not to recognize me, aren't you? Ouch. 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 My wife. I'm sorry. I pulled Shen Changqing onto the Naiha Bridge. He said with a hint of bitterness. Recently, I met Gu Xiong. He said that since someone was already waiting for you on the Naiha Bridge, he decided to reincarnate and live a happy life. That ungrateful Gu Qin. Well, I hope he can live a happy life in his next life. Don't let me drag you down anymore. Shen Changqing whispered in my ear. Don't swallow the mangpa soup. Keep it in your mouth and spit it out when you're reincarnated. I won't. Are you really going to forget me? It depends on your behavior.